Well, it gives me great pleasure to bring on board someone who is rarely seen on TV, but it's a company which in a sense has been one of the biggest wealth creator in the history of Indian capital markets. Asian Paints has given a return which perhaps could be called as a return to shareholders, which is one of the best in the world in last 20 years. So what does the CEO of India's biggest paint company feel about where consumer demand is moving? What will it take to revive the consumer sentiment, and how exactly the challenges which currently the country is facing because of COVID can be fixed? So let me bring on board Mr. A. Syngle. He represents Asian Paints. Let me first start with the big picture, which is that what is your understanding of what is happening to the economy? There are several companies which are now coming and sharing with us that they have either normalized their operations or they are about to normalize operations. What is your understanding of what is happening to your business and to the consumer demand?
Okay, thanks first of all, Nikunj and ET Now for getting me on the channel. And I think it's a pleasure to be talking to you in terms of what's really happening now. Getting straight to the brass tacks, what I see is that, it's been an unprecedented time. It's been something which has been very, very uncertain, which I think no business has seen in the, for the last possibly 6-7 decades in terms of as I see it. But I think the part which we are seeing is that after April, which was absolutely zero, I think we've seen the demand come back slowly but surely to that extent. May was something which we saw was more the pent-up demand in terms of what was there. But from June onwards, what we have seen is that there is new demand which is coming to the fore. And we grew by about double-digit volume growths in the month of June. So which was surely at the back of new demand which was coming from homes in a very, very strong manner. And from that on, we have seen gradually, the demand kind of pick up. And as we see the months of July, August, and September, I think it's been a gradual comeback in a very strong manner, which is what we are seeing. So when we analyze this whole area, it comes to some things which are very, very strong. So what we have seen is that the larger demand patterns are coming from obviously the T2, T3 and T4 cities across the country. And that has been the story possibly across brands and businesses, where we are saying that the rural and the semi-rural and the semi-urban kind of a demand is something which has been strong, because what we have seen is that the the COVID impact in some of these geographies have been slow. And to that extent, I think these cities rebounded back very, very fast from what was happening immediately post the lockdown. And we see that in some of these cities, demand is almost back to the pre-COVID levels in a very, very strong way. On the other hand, what we have seen is that the metros and the T1 cities have been slow, especially the metros, and this kind of depends in terms of in which geographies they are. So for example, I think Western geography is most affected, which is Mumbai and surrounding areas. And when we look at southern geographies, I think Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and some parts of Kerala, I think those were affected a lot in terms of what we see. We also saw a little bit of a progression of the COVID in terms of the hinterland and some of the smaller towns getting affected, slowly as well. And we also had this whole area of very infrequent, lockdowns being done by states across the entire country. Now that definitely have been, those have been very clearly the impediments in terms of really predicting very strongly in terms of where the growth is going and how it is kind of going. But how we see it right now is that definitely there is good demand, at least across various parts of the country, especially as I said, T2, T3, T4 continue to do well. Even metros and T1 to some extent are bouncing back in terms of the new demand which is coming up. And what we see very clearly is that the consumer, which was really hesitating, early in May and June, seems to be now taking the entire COVID in his or her stride. People are aware that today the The recovery from the COVID cases is very high, up to 75% and above, and the mortality rate is very low, and that also amongst a certain section of the people at a certain age bracket. And therefore, I think people have kind of shunned the fear and they've taken this as the new normal to that extent. And we are saying that people are also bouncing back in terms of not looking at only essentials, but looking at also the discretionary spends which are coming out, which are around home decoration, home maintenance, buying consumer durables and so on and so forth to that extent. And I think that's a good trend in terms of what we are seeing in terms of what's really happening in and around at the moment.
If I have to take the clock back and let's say talk about what your understanding of the consumer behavior was, let's say in the month of April or late March, are you somewhere pleasantly surprised with the ability of the consumer to A, generate demand, and B, also spend?
Yeah, I think, given the COVID impact which had come, I think the fear psychosis had taken up very, very strongly. And that is why what we were saying in, end March, April was more in terms of the spend only on the essentials, which was regarding basically the food and so on and so forth in terms of what food, medicines and so on and so forth. But what we have seen is that I think very clearly, as I said, the customer has emerged out of that paranoia which was there in the mind. And we see that people graduating in terms of really spending money on not many areas, which includes even discretionary spend. And we see that home as an area has become very, very important. So what we were seeing is that now that home is a far more greater place of emotional connect. I think the social gatherings are more happening at home now, given the fact that restaurants, malls, entertainment places are kind of closed. And we see that, a lot of customers are tending to now spend more and more with respect to their homes in terms of the discretionary choices, even with respect to decorating, spending on their homes at the high-end categories levels to that extent. So I think that's beginning to kind of really come up, which has been surprising in terms of how people have reverted so fast. But I think that's the new normal where people kind of adjust to some of this uncertain times very quickly. And I think that's the spirit I think we are banking on in terms of looking at the festival season also kind of going well as we kind of go ahead, because I think people have adjusted to this new normal.
Okay, so let's talk about what's happening in the industry, sir. The paint industry was growing in double digit about a couple of years ago, but suddenly the growth has contracted to single digit. Is this base effect? Is this largely because of the slowdown which has happened in the economy? Is single digit growth now the new normal for the paint industry?
See, what I would put it like this is that if you look at the period of 2008 to 2012, I think that was a golden period where everything was in high double digits in terms of the growth rates across the industry. And we were really surpassing those growths in a very big way. When we looked at the period 2012 to 2017, I think the growths definitely kind of came down, but they were still, I think, from the volume point of view, of still in double digits. And even the value figures were closer to about, I would say, 8 to 9% in terms of what we saw. And we were able to ride on the trend and kind of grow faster than the market, even in that phase. It's only in the last, I think, 3 years is what we are seeing that possibly that there is a little bit of the economic slowdown, which is trying to impact in terms of what's happening, which has got the industry growth to a little bit of that single digit which you see. But I think the single digit is still on a higher side and not on a lower side in terms of what we are seeing in the environment today. You must also remember that it is correlated very strongly with the GDP growth of the country. And if you see the 3 periods which I mentioned, gradually the GDP has really also come down. And if we see the last 3 years, we have been possibly hovering in the range of about anywhere between 4.5% to about 6% kind of a zone in terms of the GDP. And we must realize that somewhere the paint industry is also pegged in terms of how this kind of really GDP grows to that extent. So I would say that there is nothing very surprising from the point of view of that, today we are into a single digit kind of a growth, which is there overall, which is still on the higher side. But I think it is correlated to one, GDP very strongly. Secondly, I think it is very strongly related to the whole renovation and the new construction segment. We are seeing definitely that the real estate market has been very down. We have been seeing that the new construction, especially in terms of the large housing projects, especially at the luxury and the medium level kind of segment, is something which has come down. And this is reflected with respect to even the sale of some of the core categories like cement and steel, which is there in the market. So I think that's another factor which is working, where the new construction is something which is kind of slowing down the demand to some extent. But I think at the same time, what is heartening is that some of the government initiatives which are coming, which are talking of housing for all and looking at smart cities kind of coming in, are also elements which would possibly give a fillip in terms of the growth to that extent in terms of what we are seeing around. So as I see looking forward, a lot depends in terms of how the overall economy bounces back. And if the overall economy bounces back to the levels of about 6 to 7% and above, I'm sure I think the paint industry will be back to the double-digit growth in a very, very strong way.
What would be the endeavor of Asian Paints? You have the largest market share, 50% plus market share, and you've always gained market share when there has been a slowdown because of your efficient pricing and distribution. So when there is a slowdown, what are you focusing on? Protecting margins or gaining market share?
So see, at Asian Paints, we have believed that always to take a very balanced viewpoint. We don't really tend to kind of go in terms of extremities to that extent. And even when there is a little bit of the slowdown, I think the endeavor is that we will continue to grow the market and focus with respect to really seeing that we are getting a good increase in terms of our top line, getting into new segments, getting into innovations in a very, very big way. And I think that's the endeavor in terms of what we look at in terms of going ahead, that even if there is a little bit of a slowdown, we have not shied away in terms of looking at either marketing spends or looking at spending in terms of employees, or in terms of raising salaries, or like putting new capacities. I think we have taken a very, very balanced view, because we think that today the Indian market is very, very strong. And when we look at the market for the next 5-7 decades, I think there is a lot of growth in this market, and therefore we continue to invest in the market irrespective of the fact that there is a smaller level of a slowdown which is happening, or there is currently a COVID impact which is happening to that extent. I think our direction is very, very clear. Innovation very strongly, get on to the newer technologies, harp on the digital mediums very, very strongly in terms of going forward, and look at completely growing the market rather than looking at really gaining share from the existing players, because you're already a leader with a big share in the market.
So Mr. Syngle, whatever you're referring to are important changes which will have far-reaching implications. You're investing right now for the future. Let me quote TCS here, and when I spoke to the CEO of TCS, Rajesh Gopinathan, he said the following, that we like to maintain a band of margins between 24 to 26%. And if we are earning more than that, we start investing. Given that you've adopted transformational changes on AI, distribution, automation, robotics, these would lead to transformational changes in your ROS and margins. So what would be your policy now? Are you likely to maintain a margin band, and anything above that you're likely to invest back, or are you okay with your margin and ROS going higher?
So I think, at our end, we don't rest our thoughts with respect to saying that, we need to invest only when the profits are higher than the band in terms of what we are operating. One, we are very clear is that, we would like to be always very strongly in the eyes of the stakeholders and the shareholders in terms of the expectations from the brand. So I think the delivery of the bottom line profitability in a certain band is something which is very, very strong, and that is something which the financials of the company have been reflecting over a period of time. At the same time, I think we feel that we have been able to generate enough cash given the fact that we are debt free, we've been able to kind of invest simultaneously into many initiatives, because this also comes in from the point of view that there is continuous innovation which is happening with respect to even reducing our costs. So whether it is in terms of overheads, or it is in terms of a large amount of energy which goes in terms of looking at material cost reduction. So please remember that in our industry, that the material composition and as a percentage into the total business is extremely high. And therefore, anything which we kind of do with respect to innovation, whether it is with respect to sourcing, or whether it is with respect to formulations, or with new chemistries, that will always possibly give us higher margins to kind of come in, which would kind of keep the bottom line healthy and give us enough cash to kind of keep on spending on the newer initiatives in terms of going forward. So as I see it, I don't see it as a process where it is in fits and starts, that I stop investing when basically I find that my bottom line is getting into an area which is slightly dangerous. I think we ensure that we are doing enough initiatives so that we keep the profitability band intact. At the same time, I think the investments kind of continue to go. And the investments also go very strongly in terms of building the brand, which is the whole area of advertising and marketing, which I think is the core to the brand, able to kind of really look at all the financial ratios which you spoke of in terms of a good way, in terms of propping them up in the last 2-3 decades. And that is something which we would like to go as we kind of go forward.
But will I be wrong? And correct me, Mr. Syngle, I don't want to get this wrong for our viewers and for your shareholders. Can I say that in terms of the golden period the paint industry has had in last decade, that golden period is unlikely to come back, because we are unlikely to go back to 7 or 8% GDP growth and double-digit nominal GDP growth in a hurry?
Yeah, but what we have also to kind of see that even if we retain our GDP growths to the levels of about anywhere between 6 to 8%, I think that is good enough in terms of really delivering what we are delivering today, and maybe possibly look at maintaining the kind of profits, the kind of financial ratios in terms of what we have been kind of bringing to the fore. Because you must remember that as a leader, we are just not really working in terms of saying that we are looking at the current market and totally dependent only on the economic growth. We are also looking at newer avenues, because in India, the per capita consumption of paint is still at a very low level as you compare it with possibly more developed economies. So to that extent, there are lots of avenues in terms of looking at saying that, can I really increase the paint consumption much more, so that I could kind of really go away from even the GDP growths in terms of what's really happening. So for instance, if today you are able to alter the painting cycles, that itself gives a fillip to a large growth coming in terms of the paint. Second, there are so many segments which today, as Asian Paints, we have been able to kind of get in and really able to kind of grow those segments by introducing new chemistries. Just to give you an example, long back, it was only cement paint which used to be there in the exteriors market. Asian Paints was the first one which we came out with smooth emulsions. And I think that revolutionized the entire paint industry in such a strong manner that became a very, very strong paint growth vehicle for a long time, and it continues even till now. Similarly, if you look at the line segment, which has been transformed into value emulsions and higher end emulsions in a strong way. So I think there are a lot of growth opportunities which we keep on taking up and looking at growing the market in a very, very strong manner. Look at waterproofing. That itself is a very big zone in terms of today under penetration in the market. And we think that today, if with our muscle and with our foray, we could kind of really invigorate the demand there, that could be possibly another strong growth avenue in terms of taking the demand very, very high. So I think as we kind of look forward, even with some of the GDP levels at 6 to 7%, I think there are avenues in terms of where we can promise that we will kind of continue to get into the journey of the double-digit growths and looking at maintaining a certain profitability band for our shareholders and stakeholders.
Let me speak about a common belief which analysts have about Asian Paints. The view is Asian Paints is a great company, but it's an expensive stock. They will struggle, but Asian Paints delivers. Your stock goes higher, you're able to create shareholder wealth. So what would be your message to those who think that Asian Paints is a mature business and the paint industry is a mature industry?
My message to people would be always that if they have really kind of believed in Asian Paints and the paint industry, it's an industry which is set out to grow, because what we see is that there are lots of avenues of growth which I just outlined, and we think that today, given the stage of the country where we are, and given the fact that there are lots of investments with respect to infrastructure, in terms of other areas which is happening, there is more demand which is opening up. And today we find that not only Asian Paints, every paint company seems to be investing in lots of manufacturing capacities going up to that extent. And to that extent, possibly, I think paint industry is still a very, very attractive investment in terms of looking at in terms of where we are going. And today, I think so long as possibly the company keeps on delivering value with respect to various financial ratios and increasing the shareholders' wealth, I think it is a good stock to kind of really go for.
Asian Paints has always been a paints industry. Even though you have a very deep understanding of the home market, home improvement market, could these be natural extension in coming years for Asian Paints?
Yeah, you guessed it right. In fact, we have been working in this area very strongly. Today, we speak of saying that Asian Paints is not just about being on the walls, we are in between the walls as well, within a home space. And that's, I think, which is the endeavor in terms of what we've taken. About 4-5 years back, we've invested into, two categories, which is the bathroom and the kitchens, which we think in the renovation sector are the fastest growing categories. And with that as the objective, we have taken, a foray into home decor very, very strongly. Today, we have flagship stores across lots of cities where we have a one-stop store where we are offering a customer right from anything which the customer needs from the home. It could be with respect to flooring, with respect to walls, kitchens, bath, lighting, anything you name is something which is available in the store under one roof. And I think that's something which we have taken in a very, very big way in terms of looking at, in terms of reaching out to people, that we are able to kind of now project ourselves as a full home decor company, where we satisfy the customer, bring inspirations to life, and give the customer a chance to make their dream homes. So I think that's been the new foray, and we've just launched a service which is called the Beautiful Home Service, where in the comforts of your home, we are able to offer you a full renovation of your home, a full redoing of your home. Even if you want to just do the bathrooms or the kitchens, Asian Paints Beautiful Home Service is at your steps in terms of making your homes more beautiful and thereby increasing our emotional connect with the homes, which has been the mainstay of the brand.
Before we wrap, I'm going to ask you a question which perhaps could be more like an insightful question. For you personally in the COVID period, as a manager, what has been the most challenging period? I mean, when did you think that, okay, it's going to be really ugly for your company, your business, your employees, and what has been the most joyful moment also?
Okay, great. I think the most joyful moment has been that we play to no rules, okay? And there is no rule book in the world which you follow. I think that has been the biggest joy for me, because if you keep on following rule books, life is very mundane. So I think there have been lots of challenges in terms of what's really happened since the entire, COVID started with the lockdown into late March, as we saw it. I think one of the areas was to how to keep the whole area of stakeholders alive in a very, very strong manner. And in this, the first were our employees in a very strong manner. And I think we took a step which possibly at that point of time, no company was talking of. Right in the month of April, I had announced, increases in salaries for all our employees. And at a point when everyone in the environment was talking of layoffs and talking of, cuts in the salaries, I think that was a big challenge in terms of really, talking about such a bold initiative in these times, because one felt very clearly that in these times, if your people are with you and you are able to kind of bolster their confidence, they will definitely come alive and be with you as you kind of go ahead in your transformational journey across. And the second area was that in terms of looking at all of the stakeholders, be it our retailers, be it our painters, architects, and also our consumers. So we kept on doing a huge amount of initiatives in terms of reaching out to them, keeping them alive, looking at caring at them in a very strong manner. And I think the brand truly showed how responsible and caring the brand is to that extent. And the most important factor in this was that in all these times where people were kind of taking money out and not spending on marketing, we kept on kind of relating to the customer in a very, very strong way. We had various ATL campaigns in the month of April, June, which came out along with a huge amount of digital work which we did, which kept the saliency of the brand alive in terms of in a very strong manner. And we talk of this whole parameter of the brand tonality index, which shot to a new high for Asian Paints during these times. So I think there has been lots of fun moments, lots of challenging moments, and I'm sure that any company or any organization which kind of survives through this kind of unprecedented situation is the company of future.
And Asian Paint surely has seen many twists and turns and peak and troughs of the economy, so I'm sure you will emerge a winner in this pandemic crisis. Stay safe, Mr. Syngle. Appreciate your time and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nikun. We had a good talk, I think, and safe to
Thank you very much, Mr. Syngle.
your channel viewers. Thank you.